Hi guys, welcome again. In this video I am going to discuss about Lambda Authorizer and we will also see a practical demo. So let's get started. So what is a Lambda Authorizer? A Lambda Authorizer is an API gateway feature that uses a Lambda function to control access to your API. This is one of the access control mechanisms in API gateway. Lambda Authorizer lets you implement your own authentication and authorization logic. So in the last video we saw IAM authentication method, which was also an access control mechanism. Similarly, Lambda Authorizer is also an access control mechanism in API gateway where you can use Lambda function to implement your own custom logic for authentication and authorization. Lambda Authorizer was previously known as Custom Authorizer. There are two types of Lambda Authorizers, a token based Lambda Authorizer and a request parameter based Lambda Authorizer. Token based Authorizer is also known as Token Authorizer. It receives the API caller's identity in a bearer token such as JWT or OAuth token. Whereas request parameter based Lambda Authorizer is also known as Request Authorizer. It receives API caller's identity in a combination of headers, query string parameters, stage variables and context variables. So this is the authorization workflow of Lambda Authorizer. This diagram is taken from the AWS documentation. So let us understand how Lambda Authorizer works through this diagram. So we have this client who is the caller of our API. The client calls a method on API gateway passing a bearer token or request parameters. It passes the request parameter or bearer token to API gateway. API gateway checks whether Lambda Authorizer is configured or not. If the Lambda Authorizer is configured, it calls the Lambda Authorizer function with context plus token or request parameters, and then Lambda function checks the passed token, and based on the passed token and based on our custom logic, it creates a policy. It creates a policy with allow or deny and returns it to the API gateway. API gateway evaluates the policy, and if the policy allows for this API call, then the backend Lambda function or any other integration will be succeeded. Otherwise, the call will be denied. And here we can see this policy is cached. If we have enabled caching in our API gateway, then this policy evaluation logic, this policy will be cached in the API gateway. So every time when the request comes, it will not call the Lambda function for authorization. The policy will be evaluated from the cache. So let us see this in a demo. So I am in my API gateway console. Let us first create a Lambda function for our backend. So this Lambda function will be the API backend. Go to API gateway, create API. Let us create a new REST API. Create resource. Create method. So integration type is Lambda. Choose the Lambda backend. So I have created a video in this playlist about what is a resource and method, and other descriptions about that, so you can watch that video for more information about methods and resources. So now that we have created our API, let us deploy this API to a new stage. We have now deployed our API. Let us invoke this API. Let me open Postman to invoke the API. So you can see we got reply from our backend Lambda function, hello from Lambda. So in this API call, there is no authentication done. So let us see how what are the authentication options we have and how to enable it. And we will see Lambda Authorizer, how to enable Lambda authentication. So go to this method and edit the method request settings. In the authorization, you can see there is only AWS IAM available here. So but in this video we need to enable Lambda Authorizer. So cancel this, and here in this list you can see there is authorizer option. So we need to create an authorizer. So before creating an authorizer, we need the Lambda function for this authorizer. As we saw in this picture, we need a Lambda function which will be our Lambda auth function, having our custom logic for authorization and authentication. So let me create a new function which will be our Lambda Authorizer. Create function. So this is our code for Lambda Authorizer, which is having the custom validation logic. I will discuss this code later on. Let us deploy it. Let us now create an authorizer. We can give any name here. Authorizer type will be Lambda. Choose the Lambda Authorizer function that we just created. And Lambda event payload type will be token. As we discussed earlier in the slide, there can be two types like token and request. So we will be choosing token here. Give authorization token header. We need to give a header that contains the authorization token. So let us disable caching for now and create authorizer. So our Lambda authorizer is now created. We can test this authorizer from here. So we need to pass the token value. Let me pass some token value. Let us say I am passing an invalid token. Test authorizer. So Lambda Authorizer returned us this policy with effect deny. So let us now check our Lambda Authorizer code and try to understand what is being done here. So I am in my Lambda Authorizer code now. Here we have printed the event that we got from authorizer. So let us see the logs. So in the logs we can see event. In the event the type is token and method ARN is the ARN of our API, and authorization token, in authorization token we got invalid underscore token value. So in the code what we are doing, we fetch the token from this event and then perform custom logic to validate the token and determine authorization. So here we have created our function some custom where we will do our custom validation logic. So what we are doing here is, if the token equals to valid token, if this condition is true, then this function will return true, otherwise the function will return false. So in this case we passed invalid underscore token, so this function returned false. So here in is authorized we got false. So now what we are doing, we need to build the authorization policy which will be returned by this Lambda Authorizer function. So here we are building the authorization policy, and in the effect you can see we will say allow if is authorized, else deny. So in this case, in is authorized we got false, so the effect is deny. We got deny. Let us now pass valid token. So now you can see in the policy that we got from Lambda Authorizer, the effect is allow. So in this way you can implement your own custom logic to validate the token. For example, you might verify the token against a user database or any external authentication service, and in this way you can implement your own authentication logic and return the policy. Now in this step we created the authorizer. Now let us go to our API. In the method request settings, we can now choose the authorization method as Lambda Auth. Now you can see here in the list we got this Lambda Auth. Earlier we saw that there was only AWS IAM available here. Now we got a new token authorizer, Lambda Auth. Choose this authorizer and save. Deploy the API. Now we will invoke our API again from postman, and we will see what happens. So we got the message unauthorized, because now we need to provide the authorization token. So in the header, provide authorization token. Valid token. So after providing the valid token, we got response from our backend Lambda. Let me give some invalid token. So on giving the invalid token, we got message, user is not authorized to access this resource with explicit deny. So in this way we can see we implemented our own custom logic for authorization in our API using Lambda Authorizer. So this was all in this video. If you like the video, please hit the like button, and if you have any comments or feedbacks or any doubt, you can write it in the comment box. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. Thank you.